Now to our fun part here. We are very, very, very thrilled that you all joined us tonight to listen to our guest speaker, someone I have looked up to and admired for many years. Her name is Carla Zimmerman. She is a speech and language pathologist with a certification in auditory verbal therapy. She is at Zimmerman Speech and Hearing. Did I say the name correctly?
You got it.
Okay. And she's an amazing, amazing, amazing therapist that I have, I give her all the credit in the world for working with my children 12 years ago till this day. And I have nothing but respect for her. So I am very excited to have her on here tonight. She will be presenting for us, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers at the end. So with that, Carla, we are very excited to have you, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. And, this is Deaf Awareness Week, and it's a month. And it's a time when I think we can think about the big picture of having a child with hearing loss and what that impact is, and are we doing best practice? Are we doing our very best? So let's see, are the slides going to come up? Hooray, terrific. Okay, so today we're going to talk about supporting your child's listening and spoken language skills. So when you have a child who has a hearing loss, the biggest impact on their development of communication is the fact that they don't have typical access to auditory skills. And so they've got to use technology and a lot of extra work to be able to develop those communication skills. And today we're going to speak specifically about listening and spoken language skills. In our office, we work exclusively with kids who are using that communication modality. I do have a background in sign language. I'm a fluent signer, and I also know cute speech. So there are lots and lots of options out there for families, but today we're going to talk about listening and spoken language. So if we could advance to the next slide. I opened this talk up to my staff, and I said, what are the things that you think we should talk about? And got lots and lots of ideas. And one of the things that kept coming into my brain is the problem that I keep hearing from families is, what the heck happened to my kid's IEP? What the heck happened to the services and the protection that my child has enjoyed and is no longer really receiving? And I think that is for parents as a group, what I'm hearing is kind of a lot of panic about what the situation is, and really a feeling of hands tied, that they don't know how to handle it, that they don't know how to make things better. They don't know how long this is going to last and what the impact is on their children. And so if we could go to the next slide. Some of the problems that parents are talking to me for kids is that there's a loss of services. Even though the schools are saying, oh yeah, we're still providing services, you know that those aren't the same services that they've been getting. And those services are not just like frosting on the cake. Those are like a big deal for a lot of our kids. So we are really concerned when those are missing. Masks, and I did that in capital letters. I cannot tell you how many times a week I get an email or a text about what the best option is for kids with hearing loss. And honestly, it's a really tough challenge, and there's not a one-size-fits-all answer. So masks are a huge problem. Loss of social interaction opportunities, that is a big deal. And the longer this lasts, the more it's becoming apparent that our kids aren't having the opportunity to interact socially with peers. And then online instruction itself is just really, really difficult. So I have got a couple kids that are doing online education, and I've got like a Guardian account into what they're doing at school. so that I can kind of follow along with what's happening. I can monitor their comprehension, see if there's something that's kind of falling through the cracks. And I have to tell you, I am shocked in many cases about how horrible it is. I don't know how some of the kids are learning anything. So I have seen some that's a little bit better than others, but I've seen some pretty bad stuff. For parents, in our clinic, we talk about this a lot because we're all parents. My kids are grown up and I'm not dealing with this the same way that you are. But a lot of our staff is trying to hold down their job as a speech language pathologist, auditory verbal therapist, but they're also trying to hold their families together. And it has been a huge wake up call to me to see how that's impacting them. And so I think for you as parents who are really worried about what's happening with your child, you've got a lot of things on your plate. You're being asked to wear too many hats, and you're trying to hold things together, and even just getting dinner on the table. And that's all I had to do tonight, and it was a big deal. So I don't know how you're doing it, but it's stressful. And then just everything with the pandemic, all the fears that come with that, with being sick, with the chances that your child's been exposed to something, the chances that your parents are going to be impacted, so many fears and so many things that we just don't know. So I am aware of the whole big picture, and this doesn't cover everything, but these kind of jumped into my mind. Next slide, please. So when I talked to my staff, there was a great idea from Jody, and Jody said, I think parents really just need to push the reset button. And okay, how many of you do that on your computer? Like it's just not working right, or your phone, or your tablet, or something. You're just like, this is not working right, and you push the reset button, and it's like, the apple comes up, and everything is a lot better. And so what I want you to do, like I just named a whole bunch of horrible stuff that's happening, and I want you just to take a deep breath, and I want you just to say, okay, like that's where it is right now, but let's push reset. Let's kind of start over and move forward from where we're at. So next slide. One of the things that I really want to stress with you, and Jody suggested this as well, is relationships. Relationships are so important in our family. That is where you get your feeling of support. I don't know about you, but those are the people that I go home and I unload to. And I'm not very nice to them sometimes. I'm a lot nicer to the people that I see in my office than I am to the people at home. But without those relationships, I wouldn't be able to do what I do at the office. So those relationships are so critical. And at this time, with all the pressure that's going on, kids are really aware of it. They're aware. They may not know why you're stressed, and they might not know all the pieces of it, but they know that there's stress. And that is really hard on kids. I don't know about you, but we've had quite a few families who've come in and said that their kids are acting very differently right now. I've got several kids in the office that it's not pretty. I can see that these are kids who had better control of themselves at one point, and right now that's really falling apart for them. And so what I want you to think for a second is, okay, you're worried about your kids' education, you're worried about all those things, but you know what? We can do something about that. And the biggest thing for you really is to establish or strengthen those relationships in your family, and encourage a feeling of safety among the people in your family. I've been in several conversations just this week with people who said that, well, they'll tell me my child, and the child is sitting right there, they're not doing this and they're not doing this and they're falling behind in this, and like I get that that's happening, right? But this is hard for everybody, and so really try to keep that is job number one for you. Okay, next slide. And the next idea is to rest and recharge. That if you can carve out some time every day to unwind, that will make a big difference. There are some great studies that show that the brain works best when you have a healthy combination of stress and rest. So if you think about, like, when you're learning a new skill, that you're stressing yourself, right? You go to bed and you rest and you recharge, and that allows you to grow. Think about that in terms of your whole life, that you gotta build some of that time in. And I have to tell you, I'm the worst at this. I am terrible at giving myself time. I've got pretty much every minute of most days mapped out, and there is not rest and recharge in there. But so I'm kind of the pot calling the kettle black. But I think that it is really something important to remember, and it's a goal to try to achieve. Okay, next slide. Okay, now what can you do about listening and spoken language? So remember I told you job one was relationships. Job number 1A is amplification. So if we're talking about listening and spoken language skills, we're talking about allowing a kid to use their auditory skills to access the sound in their environment to the best of their ability. Kids need to wear their amplification full time. That means their eyes open, their amplification goes on. It's on all day until bedtime. And I think it's easier to pull that off actually when you're in school and you've got like a reason to get up and put on your amplification. If you've got a kid who's hanging around the house all day, they might feel like they don't need to put on their processor or their hearing aids some of the time. But really, it's important. There's some great research that shows that kids' brains don't do well with changes in accessibility to sound. They do a lot better when they've got a steady sound picture and they can deal with it. And the other thing to remember is that for children, when we're talking about developing listening and spoken language, that is an auditory job. If you're not maximizing that source and that region of information for your child, then you're really cutting them short of what they need to do their best. So there's some great research out there, and really the minimum is 10 to 11 hours a day. We see a huge difference in kids who are wearing their amplification that amount versus less. And then the other thing is make listening easier. Make your home quieter, get closer, use assistive technology if necessary. And assistive technology, I'm talking about your Roger system or something like that. Listening is hard. Those of you who have a hearing loss can speak to this very well, that it's hard to pick out the important information. So for your child with hearing loss, it can be really helpful to make the house a little quieter. If you're not actually needing to run that dishwasher right now, don't. If you don't need to have the TV on, don't have it on. All that background noise makes it much murkier to pick out information. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is my favorite quote. And if you've heard me talk before, there's a really good chance you've heard me say this. I love it. The idea is that language is caught, not taught. So I want you just to pause for a second. I want you to think about what you do with your kid and picture your interactions with your child. And I want you to think to yourself, do I sit down and try to teach my child, or am I providing kind of a language-rich environment where my child has the ability to be kind of immersed in language and they have the ability to pick the bits up that are important to them? That is the key. That is so key. How many of you, think for a second, how many of you have had a kid that you tried to teach something and it did not go well? Okay, I'm going to list a few of my own. Potty training. I did not teach either of my kids how to use the potty. Their daycare workers did it. They were not going to learn to use the potty with me. So that's one of my experiences of trying to teach a child. In our office, we have one of our therapists is a very, very skilled pianist. She gives lessons in her free time, which she doesn't really have, but she cannot teach her children piano. They go to another instructor to learn piano because she cannot really teach her children. You know that kind of like that happens when you're trying to teach your kid and there's just like bad energy, bad feelings. That kind of thing happens when you are trying to teach your kid. So what we want to do is avoid that. If you really think about it, language is a part of everything that we do all day long. We can make language easier for kids to catch without getting into I'm teaching you, which sets us up for really kind of a negative interaction spiral. So what my recommendation is to you today is to break away from videos, get away from worksheets, avoid anything that looks like that. No flashcards, none of that business. What I want you to think about, you might need them for something else, but that's not what we're talking about here. I use flashcards for kids who are trying to study for a test, but when we're talking about learning language, the best way to learn it is to have active interaction with another person. No matter how you do it, there's always an opportunity to promote language development. There's so many different things that you can do to teach it. And so let's go into some of the ideas. And next slide. The very first one is books. Books are big, big, big in my world. I put the little magic dots above the book because to me they are magical. There is so much language opportunity in a book that I'd really challenge you, if you're not already incorporating book time into your daily interactions with your kids, try to find a way to do that. I know it's hard. I know it's hard to make everything fit, but that book time is so critical. And when I'm talking about book time, I'm not really talking about you sitting down and teaching them to read. That is reading work. Book time is a little bit different. And so if you look at the picture of the dad with the kids on his lap who's reading out loud to them, those kids are really immersed in that book. Dad's not trying to test them. He's not trying to teach them. He's enjoying that book and the kids are enjoying it with them. When we read books, we're exposed to vocabulary that's outside of our norm. I don't know if you've read a children's book recently, but it's shocking how advanced sometimes the vocabulary is. You have really great opportunities to expose children to vocabulary. You also have a great opportunity to expose kids to figurative language. Things like, and she bumped into her in the parking lot. If that's not something that you would normally say in daily life, then reading it in a book gives your child some exposure to some of those idiomatic language forms that are really critical for kids to learn. I have this picture here of this goodnight little bear where the bear's on the dad's shoulders. And then you can see that this dad is acting out that book. This is one of my all-time favorite techniques to use. I use it almost every day in therapy, and kids love it. Kids don't always love it the first couple times we do it because they don't know what's going on. And kids sometimes don't like to do things that are strange and new, and they might feel a little bit uncertain. But what we'll do a lot of the times with a book is we'll read a book, and sometimes we'll get to a part where I can tell that this child's a little bit confused. And sometimes I'll pause and I'll say, okay, do you want to be the baby bear or do you want to be the dad bear? And they're like, well, I'm going to be the dad bear. Okay, I'm the baby bear then. And then we act it out. We act out what just happened. And then I say, okay, now it's my turn to be the baby bear. And then that, or whichever one I was, and I can't even remember. And then we switch sides. That really allows kids to start to get some perspective taking. And it is super fun. And it's a great language technique. So I would really encourage you to think about a way to incorporate books at home. And one thing that I want to say is like, I think a lot of times we think of books for like these little kids that are in these pictures. I have to tell you that I read to my kids all the way until the time that they graduated from high school, um, especially in a car. And it's kind of a family joke. And I think they're joking, but they could be kind of like, there could be a little bit serious. But whenever we go on a trip, they always say, oh, what books are you packing, Mom? Because they know we're going to read books in the car. And the last time I did that, we read Game of Thrones on the way to California. And it was a good book. And they were surprised that they liked it. That was a long time ago, so we haven't done that for a while. But I would say that books are super important and super fun. And be thinking about questions that you might have about books, because I'd be glad to answer them at the end. I feel like that's an area that I have some great ideas for you. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, pretend play. I think pretend play is really hard for adults to do. A lot of times adults feel really silly doing it. They feel awkward. They feel, especially dads, not always, but they can feel really not comfortable doing it. So what I want you to think about with pretend play is you really want to follow your kids' lead on this. That you want to think about, what do they want to do with this? It's really easy to go into pretend play and think to yourself, we're going to XYZ. But that might not be the idea that your child has. And when you're at cross purposes with your child, it's not pretty. The other thing is that if you're following your child's lead, your child is going to be really invested in what you're doing. So let's use one of these for an example. Let's say that the kids who are playing with the blocks with their dad, that dad had in mind that they were going to make a city and drive cars through it. But the kids don't want to do that. The kids, you're getting the message that they don't really want to do that. And what the kids really want to do is build the towers as high as they can and see what's going to happen to them. And so feel free to let your plan go, because you could keep trying to talk about the car, but your kid's like on a whole different page, and you're not going to get a very good outcome of your pretend play. But if you can follow their lead, then you are going to really amplify the outcome of that pretend play. When I'm doing pretend play, I usually think to myself, what is it that I want this child to get out of it? So an example is, I'm going to give you an example about my granddaughter. I have a granddaughter who's 18 months, just turned 18 months. And I usually think about what she's going to want to play. She comes over to my house for a day every week. And it's fun for me to figure out what we're going to play. So all of a sudden she's really interested in farm stuff. So I decided we were going to do farm. And I got a couple farm books out. I got a couple farm puzzles out, just kind of laid them strategically around the house, because it's a lot more fun for her if she discovers it and brings it to me than if I sit down and I say, oh, Piper, sit down. Come on, let's go do this puzzle. She's like, I don't think so. I don't think so. But if it's all around, then she can kind of play with it and invite me in. And that's a really nice, really nice interaction to have. And for her, I knew that she doesn't know very many of those words. She knows a lot of the sounds that the animals make, but she doesn't know very many of the words. And I also know that she loves verbs. So I thought about some verbs that we could use. I think we did munch, munch, munch. She knew most of the basics, but I just thought to myself, like, what am I going to do? And I was intentional when I went into that activity. I thought to myself, these are the things that I want to talk about. And I'll follow Piper's lead if she doesn't want to talk about it. If she wants to do something else, that's okay. But I have an idea about where I'm going to go, and that gets us started. Okay, next page. All right, making something is super awesome. You can make things with little kids. It's a little bit harder. As they get older, you can really pull an imagination. But let's say that you were going to, and this picture is not on here, but it just popped into my head. I did this a couple of years ago with a family, and it was super fun. We pretended that we were pirates. I've got I've got more toys than the average person, and I've got a really awesome pirate chest, and it's full of jewels and coins and stuff like that. I also have a couple foam swords, and I have some scarves, and I figured we could kind of tie pirate bandana things on. I don't know. And we talked about having a pirate game, about setting up a pirate little world. And so we had an island with the treasure kind of hidden under pillows. And then we had a blanket that was our boat. And we kind of made a whole pretend world. And that was super fun, and so much language, so much vocabulary. You can make something that's really tangible. You can sit down and make some Play-Doh. Play-Doh is an all-time standby for us. We do a lot of Play-Doh in the office, a lot of making Play-Doh, and it's kind of magic. You have the flour and I do the Kool-Aid kind. So you have the Kool-Aid, but it doesn't look like any color yet. And you pour in the hot water and the oil, and it's like, whoosh, like a cloud of fragrant grape steam, if you're using grape Kool-Aid, that comes up, and you stir it a couple times, and you got Play-Doh. And it's like magic. And so you've got the fun of making it, but then you've got like the magic of the actual science of it happening. And then you've got all the fun things you can do with the Play-Doh afterwards. And that Play-Doh lasts forever. So think about something you can make. Going back to the granddaughter, she often will help me make dinner. She's not, you can guess she's not very helpful. She's 18 months old. But I've got like a tower that she can stand in at the counter. And I give her like a little butter knife, and I give her some of the vegetables, and I give her a bowl, and she moves things in and out, and we just talk about it as she's going. She thinks it's really fun, and I'm getting the stuff done that I need to do. But we're making something together, and it's fun. I love the blanket fort. I've got a family that I work with, and that is their favorite thing to do, to make a blanket fort. And they have the best time after they make them, kind of just making up the story about who they are and where they're at and who lives where and what's happening. Think about when you did that as a kid, how much fun that was. And that gives you an idea about, that's a great language activity that you can do with your child. Okay, next slide. Okay, around the house. There are a lot of things that have to get done around the house, and those are great language opportunities too. I actually just saw a video not too long ago about toddlers and doing laundry. And like, I know sometimes you're just doing laundry and you just want to get it done, right? But you can, let's say you've got a really little kid, you said, put it in the washer, put it in the washer, put it in the washer. There's a little phrase that you're using over again. If it's a child who's got a little bit more skills, you might talk about the detergent and the suds and the, I don't know. I'm kind of running out of other ideas there. But you know, words that go with it. Making a sandwich. I have one family that I see online, and we have been making a sandwich every single day for over a month. Every time I see them, that's our last activity, and the kids love it. It's a great opportunity to talk about what do we need, to request the items. We can shape it around the language structures that we want that child to learn. If it's a child who's a little bit more advanced, we can change it up. We can make it a different type of an activity. But it's one of those things, a lot of these activities are things that you can do a very basic type of an activity, and you can also make it a more advanced activity. Okay, next slide. Okay, outside. Well, I've got one outside picture that's not really outside because it's so flipping hot here. But there are a lot of things that you can do outside or that you can pretend that you're doing outside. I know a lot of families who set up tents in their house during the summer because it's too hot to really do it outside in Arizona. But the pictures that I have here are doing a scavenger hunt. I've done that many times. And one of the things I want to mention to you, like most of the stuff that we're talking about doesn't need any prep at all. You just think about it before you start, and you always want to think about it because it allows you to be intentional about what you're doing. You're not just flying by the seat of your pants. But you also want to be flexible. But there are some things out there, like I typed in, as I was looking for things for this, I typed in scavenger hunt, and you would not believe all the free scavenger hunt things that popped up. And I thought to myself, that would be fun. Like, I don't have anybody at my house who really wants to do that right now, but that would be a super fun thing. You could easily set that up, just print it off and set it up, and would take all the prep out of it for you. Because doing a real scavenger hunt actually does take a little bit of effort. Here's some kids washing bikes outside. You can help wash the car. You can plant flowers outside. You can do all kinds of stuff. You can clean the pool. You name it, lots and lots of things outside. But rather than just thinking about, and those are just jobs. I mean, there are other things you can do too. You can play a game. You can go out and do an imaginary thing in the grass. You can look for bugs. You can catch bugs. You can research about bugs. One of our favorite things with our kids when they were young was planning a vacation, and all the things that we would do around that vacation. And we would get things ahead of time, and we'd make a plan for what we were going to do. And we kind of learn ahead of time about what it was that we were going to see. And I think that my kids really learned a lot through those opportunities. I can remember Jake was 2 years old, and we had gone to northern Michigan, which is a pretty rough place. And we'd been in the woods doing the wood stuff for a long time. And we were going to go to the lake. And I said, oh, we're going to find treasures at the lake. And in my mind, I'm thinking driftwood and some shells and maybe, some bones, bird bones or something like that. And so we were picking things up, and I'd say, oh, I found another treasure. I found another treasure. And I remember Jake is 2, and he wasn't the most skilled language user. And he called that stuff treasure for like a year. And there was a part of me that was like, oh, I kind of steered him wrong on that. But there was another part of me that kind of loved it, that like he really enjoyed that and had fun with that. Okay, next slide. Okay, these are the keys that I want you to remember. Regardless of what you do and where you do it and how you do it, I want you to remember that play should be fun. It should not be work. If what you're doing looks like work, stop and rethink it, because it's not going smoothly. Kids will do a lot of stuff for fun, but they identify work pretty quickly, and they don't want to have a whole lot to do with it. So be really cautious about that. Try not to teach. Try to be real and in the moment. And I can really see in the office when I've got children who are really caught up in like a real activity. And I use the word legitimate a lot in therapy. I'll say, this doesn't look like a legitimate activity. Like, he's going to figure out that this is like an activity to try to get him to talk. And let's make it a legitimate activity, because I can guarantee he's going to talk if it's legit. So try to be real. Try to make it a real thing. I already said be intentional. And when I say be intentional, one of the things I want you to think about is, usually when I choose an activity, I've chosen it because I've got something that I want to work on. So I told you about Piper that I want to teach her some more farm vocabulary. I'm thinking about a little one that I saw today who is not using when phrases, when clauses. So the way that those clauses would go, you'd say like, oh, when my hands are dirty, I wash them with soap. Or when I hear the doorbell, I go and see who's at the door. That's a when clause. This kid's not using wine clauses. And so we thought of an activity between his mom and me. We did this one virtually today. Targeting that is what we wanted to accomplish. So we went into it thinking this is what we want to achieve from it. And I'd say we had mixed success. One of the things about that was that it was really hard to set up like a legitimate opportunity for it. We had to use some pictures of some real life things happening, but they weren't really happening to him. The next activity that we did with him today was trying to get him to use more adjectives in his sentences, because he will do some nice basic sentences, but they're not becoming longer. And the way that our sentences usually become longer in the beginning is by adding adjectives to them. So I asked them to get a little sock and a big sock and a little spoon and a big spoon. And I had the same thing on my side. And we took turns giving each other directions. And I said, put the little sock on your head. And he'd put the little sock on his head. And then he would tell me, put the big spoon in the big sock. And I would do it. And we just did silly things back and forth. I had him put a spoon in his shirt that fell out the bottom. And it was really fun. He was really motivated. We were intentional about how we did it, though. We kind of planned it ahead of time, like what's going to kind of require him to use a little bit more adjectives. And that worked for him. I don't think he felt like it was work. I think he felt like it was fun. And as soon as he started losing interest in it, we shifted gears and went on to something else, because I don't want to burn the kids out. And I want you to think about that too. One of the therapy techniques that we use a lot is recast and expansion. You might just have heard it be called recast or modeling and expansion, all kind of in the same ballpark. So children will often use a more basic form, a more elementary form, and they might say something like, "Mommy home." Your job as to respond is not to correct them. Your job is to expand upon it in a positive way. So you say, "Yes, Mommy is home." And so he got the agreement that he did it right. And he also got a good model for the next time. Maybe he'll use it correctly the next time. Here's another one. The child says, "Big doggy." The adult says, "That is a big black doggy. He's barking so loud." And so one of the biggest challenges that I see for families that come into the office or that I see online is that they become really comfortable with what the child can do. And so they might say to the child, "What do you want?" And they'll say green. And they hand over the green thing. Instead of saying, "You want the green triangle? Okay, here's the green triangle. You got the green triangle." And then you've expanded that, right? It's really easy to stay at the level where you know your child is successful. But without that expansion, without that recast to something that's more advanced, you lose every chance that you have with your child. And I put this picture of the ladder here because I use this idea in therapy a lot, that we want to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of that child, and we want to be kind of pulling them up, not yanking them up. And I don't want to be so high that they can't reach, but I want to be helping them up. I want to be encouraging and inviting them up. And the only way I do that is by giving them something better back every time they say something. And then I want you to also consider scaffolding. So I don't know if you've heard this term. It's one of those kind of educational terms, but the idea is that you take something that the child knows and you build something on top of it. I had a great idea for this one. It's completely gone out of my mind. We do this in therapy all the time, that the child will come in and they'll say, I'll just use dogs, for example. I did this one recently with a child. The child will say, "Oh, we got a new dog." I said, "You did? What kind of a dog is it?" And they're like, "Black." I say, "Well, do you have a picture of it? Can you show me?" And I'll see that it's a lab. And I'll say, "That's actually a lab. And I know somebody else who has a lab. You know what? Those dogs are really good at retrieving." Do you know what retrieving means? Well, it means that, like, if something is thrown or if something is out there, they'll bring it back to you. So I have a friend whose dog is a is a lab retriever, and he had a lot of special training, and he goes hunting with his owner. And when his owner shoots a duck and it falls into the lake, that dog retrieves the duck. He goes out, he picks it up in his mouth, and he retrieves it. He brings it back. And so, like, because I said retrieve like 5-7 times in that kid picked up retrieve. And we scaffolded onto something that kid knew. Now they also know that there's other names for dogs. It's not just black dog. Like, that's a Labrador. Like, who knew? Maybe there's other names for dogs that we might talk about another time. So I want you to think about, like, whatever your child can do, like, give them something to think about. It really encourages higher level thinking, and it creates those really important links with things that they already know. Your hearing kids are doing this all day long, right and left, without thinking about it. They overhear things, and their brain is automatically putting it together. Our kids don't do that because they don't have the same auditory access. Unless it's presented to them directly, there's a really good chance that they're going to miss it completely. And so when we do this intentionally, when we recast and expand, when we scaffold intentionally, what we're doing is allowing that child to do some of that same growth that their hearing peers are doing, because their brains are perfectly capable of it. They just aren't auditorily catching the cues that they need. Always strive to stay one step ahead of your child's language. That gives them something to reach for. Try never to be lower. Like, if they say, oh, this is yours, and you say, oh, that's mommy's. Like, oh, heavens to Betsy, that's a big step backward. And then the last one, which I should have made like in all caps and flashing, is share the load. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work being a parent, being the parent of a child with hearing loss, being a parent of a child with a hearing loss in a pandemic. It's a lot of work. And if you can share that load with your spouse, with other family members who interact with your child, with the babysitter, with whoever's involved with your child, I really think that it's good for you. You might feel like you do it better, and you probably do it better, but if everybody's kind of doing some of it, that's so beneficial for your child versus just getting it from you. Okay, next page. All right, so I put some resources down here. Honest to God, I could have gone on and on about resources. I put some that I found some really lovely things at. The first one is Supporting Success for Children with Hearing Loss. I don't know if you've ever been there. They've got a bajillion things on there, but it's so hard to find stuff. I've got a membership, and I can't find stuff on there. But if you get on there, you can sign up for their updates. Their updates are free, and every month they send you an update, has tons of good information, and it's kind of like one of those things where I know you have seen websites like this where you say, oh, that article is interesting, and then there's all those hot linked things within that article that take you off to all kinds of wonderful sources. So what you want to do is like just kind of dive in and follow your nose, because you'll find great stuff. I have a hard time finding stuff on there, but there's great stuff. Okay, AG Bell, they have, they also can be hard to find things on. They have something that's called A Growing List of Ideas for Language-Rich Indoor and Outdoor Activities Organized by Verbs for Kids. That's the name of the article, and it's got great ideas. It's got some really fun things that you could do. So if you're thinking like, gosh, I can't think of anything to do, try that out. I bet you'll find something that you'll like. Hearing First. I love this website. They offer a lot of continuing education things. So Jody and I and all the other staff in my office do quite a bit of stuff with that. But they are not only for professionals, they're also for parents. And they have got beautiful stuff. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Oberkotter Foundation. They've got an endowment, and they've put a lot of money and a lot of great brain power into this, and you'll find great resources there. We use stuff from them all the time. Storyline Online. Okay, has nothing to do with kids with hearing loss, but it's books online read out loud by um, celebrities, by actors, and they have really nice books, and they do a great job. I use it, I would say, at least once a day, maybe more in therapy. Um, Hearing Like Me is a website that's put out by Phonak, and I think it's got a lot of really great teenage stuff. It's got stuff across the board, but they've got more teenage stuff than you see most places. So some really nice stuff there. Reading Rockets, not about hearing loss at all. It's all about reading and literacy. And I know that you're probably like me and really interested in literacy development. And whenever I need something for literacy, that's where I go. So I got an email from a teacher of one of the kids that we work with, that I work with, and the email said, I tested so and so's reading skills this week, and he really needs to work on blending, sound blending. And I thought to myself, sound blending, I know what that is, but like I don't know what to do with that. And so I went on there, found a beautiful video. It was like 20-minute video, all the steps of sound blending. I went into therapy on Saturday. We started, could do it. Can't do it. So I know this is where we start. And I felt really empowered. So you can do this too. Speech Therapy Store. I just ran across this. It's just like a site, but they have 279 plus free speech therapy digital materials. And it's kind of fun. So I would say, look at that. Raising Special Kids. I love them. I think you've probably heard of them. And they've got a lot of stuff about parenting and about your rights. KiwiCo has a nice blog and do-it-yourself ideas. And then for the little kids, there's a couple ideas here. 0 to 3, First Things First, the Hannon Center, and Love Every. So, okay, I know I went really long, didn't I? I hate that I do that. You guys, I could talk forever, but I'm happy to stay on and answer any questions.
Yes, we loved everything you had to say, so that's okay that you went over. And
I tell you, that was a 15-minute talk.
Yeah, that is what you told me. I will say, I will vouch for the fact that Carla does have more toys than the average adult has. And I will vouch for the fact that pretend play can be uncomfortable because I've done therapy with her, but it is fun and it does work. So, yes, if you're okay with staying on a little bit longer, we would love to take some questions from everyone. And just to remind everyone, you are welcome to turn your videos back on. And if you have a question, just wave and we'll call on you, or you can type it into the chat box and we'll ask. So I actually had a question while we're waiting for some people. Tony agrees with me that it's an understatement that you have more toys than the average person. So I did have a question. I wanted to go back for a minute to what you said about keeping their amplification all day. And so I know you know, and everyone knows listening fatigue is a real thing. And so, with them being online so much and needing that little bit of a break, like what's a realistic break, or what do you consider like appropriate amount of, that time where they just need to decompress during the day? Because my mind's really into that right now.
That's a good question. I would say, personally, like maybe 15 minutes. If they want to take off their devices completely for 15 minutes, I could live with that. It also might not be a bad idea for them just to go into a really quiet place. I've got one of the kids that I work with who really suffers a lot from listening fatigue just in school. She has a built-in 20-minute spot every single day, and she leaves a classroom, she goes into a certain spot, and she's not allowed to read, she's not allowed to do anything. She just has quiet time. And then she's kind of like regenerated and she can go back. She also has a seizure disorder, and so they want to be really careful not to get her to the point where she starts experiencing seizures. So there's another reason behind that, but a lot of it is based on her auditory fatigue that happens throughout the day.
I love that. That's a great idea. I see Heidi stand up. Heidi?
Thank you. This is Heidi. So, Carla, I have a question that I hear every once in a while from parents when it comes to literacy, as far as reading to their children. What One of the questions that always comes up is positioning. Where should they be positioning when they're reading to their child, or reading with their child and going through a book? Because I know that there's some people will say side by side, face to face, so you can see, they can see you, see the book. Do you have certain strategies for that?
My preference is more of a side by side or on my lap kind of a thing. Um, I like that because I'm close to their ear and I can use like a regular voice and they can hear me really well and we can look at the pictures together. I'm not a good reader, like this kind of a reader. I'm a really horrible reader that way. And so that's probably part of the reason. But I prefer to um, I prefer to make it less of a show and more of like a collaboration with the kid. And I feel like that kind of positioning puts us in a more collaborative versus a I'm telling you and you better watch me and listen to me kind of thing. Not that you're going to go that way, but I just feel like it works better for me.
And, and this is Heidi again, if you don't mind. I just wanted to make a comment as well. You said during your presentation, in the very beginning, talking about the pandemic and how parents are feeling and things that are happening right now. I just wanted to reiterate how you said, we're really feeling like our hands are tied, and we're not, a lot of us don't really know how to handle this, and that the impact is so huge. And I just really appreciate taking the time to acknowledge that and validate that for the parents. I think a lot of times as parents, we don't realize that it's okay to feel overwhelmed or to feel helpless in a sense, and that we're all doing the best that we can. So I just wanted to acknowledge that you said that and appreciate that.
Oh, thank you.
This is Najwa. Anyone else have a question for Carla? Don't be shy. A lot of good information in there.
Oh, Julie has a question.
Hey, Julie.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. Thank you for sharing all the information. I am a speech pathologist, but I was recently hired at ASDB to serve the role of preschool teacher.
Oh, awesome.
So all the information was very helpful.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Julie. This is Najwa again. I did have a question also about something you said at the end. Matthew, please. You talked about sharing the load and naming some of the people. We have a lot of families who don't have someone to share the load with, I realized, especially people who are new to Arizona, moved away from their family, single parent homes. What are some things you would suggest, or how they can handle a situation like that where it really is just them? Do you have any tips? I mean, it can be so overwhelming sometimes.
I don't think I have like a magic answer for that, but what popped into my mind was just to be gentle with yourself. Do the best you can and be gentle, because you can't be superwoman or superman and do everything. You just can do what you can do. And I think that if you get really stressed about it and really burned out, it just makes everything so much worse.
Right, and that's what the other part of it was. This is Natural again, is that when you talked about making it fun and not work, I would like, ooh, sometimes I feel like it is work because I'm so tired, but I know how much they need it. And so I'm like, I'm so crabby sometimes, and I want to make it fun and I want to be a good role model, but then I feel like, oh, it is like a job sometimes. And so trying to find that balance has been a little bit of a struggle, I feel like.
Yeah, I can imagine.
There's a question in the chat box from Liliana asking, what are your go-to books to read for kindergartners?
Okay, so it kind of depends on where their language skills are. But I love Knuffle Bunny, and that whole series is awesome. I love My Lucky Day, and what's the other one that's like that one? And the same author, I can't think of it. I like books that make kids think a little bit. And so I like it when there has to be some perspective taking. So in every book that I really like at that age level, they are, it's not stated straight out like why somebody is behaving the way that they are. For instance, in My Lucky Day, there is a little pig that shows up at a fox's house, and the fox says, "My lucky day," and everybody's like, "Oh, the fox is going to eat this pig," right? At the end, you figure out this pig manipulated this whole situation, and the pig leaves saying, "My lucky day." And I love the changing of the perspective there, and that kids really have to think about that. I can remember doing that with Matthew. I can actually remember doing that exact book with Matthew Nedge when he was little, and him thinking, what? What just happened there? So I actually have like a bajillion books that I could recommend, and I'd be happy to give to chat with anybody about that.
Yeah, and if anyone wants I had mentioned it in the chat earlier, if anyone wants a list of those resources, you didn't have a chance to jot them down or take a picture of it, we can send it to you by sharing your information in the chat box, or email or something. There's a question from Julie saying, have you used boom cards?
Okay, so I am still a newbie on boom cards, but Jody has used boom cards, and she's trying to teach all the rest of us to do boom cards. So the thing that I have a hard time with is finding the boom cards that are going to work best for what I need. And it's taken me so long as I like search to find them. So the ones that Jody's been using are more kind of like almost like a encouragement kind of a thing, like almost like we play a game in the office, like we have to do 5 of these, then we get to take a turn at the game. And I think that can work really well.
So this is Nedra. We have a question of what is a boom card?
Oh boy. I don't really know how to explain that. You're gonna have to look it up.
Okay. Another question in the chat box saying, how has it been doing teletherapy for your DHH kids, and how is the speech perception?
Actually, I think it's been going pretty well. So the interesting thing about the way that we do therapy is that when I'm doing teletherapy, I'm not talking directly to that kid very much. Most of it's the parents are talking to the kid, and I'm coaching the parents as we go along. So for some of my older kids, like obviously I'm talking to them. Like I had a session today with a 8th grader, and I talked to her the whole time. Her parents were nowhere to be seen. But for most of my kids, my younger kids, they are like, there's an activity, and I already sent it to mom. There's a set of activities. Mom, I say to mom, what do you want to start with? She says, I want to do the balloon game first. She gets it out. She starts it. I'm kind of coaching her as we go. And so the perception's been pretty good. The online, when I am dealing directly with the kids, I usually am using a headset and a mic. And I think that gives a slightly better signal. But it's worked pretty well for us just in general. And I think that all of the therapists, nobody loved it going into it. We've all done a little bit of it, but it wasn't our primary thing. I have to tell you, it takes a lot more prep to do online than it does to do in person. In person, I just like pull these things off and I'm ready to go. Online, I've got to type it out and explain to the parent how to do it. And like, if you don't have this thing, then you could try this thing. And it's just so much more work. So, all the therapists, nobody loved it right off the bat, but every single therapist has said that it's been good for their families, because we have a tendency to kind of like make it go in the office, and like parents go home and they can't replicate that. And when the parents are actually doing the therapy session, that's really empowering for them, and they can replicate that throughout the week and keep those kinds of activities and interactions going. So I think it's been really helpful, although, there's pluses and minuses for everything.
Yeah, this is Nedra. I've kind of heard that same thing across the board. Just it is more work. It is a little bit harder, but this is what we have right now. So we're thankful that you're still doing it and willing to do it. So Heidi's asking, which is a good question, is do you find that parents are more engaging because of the teletherapy?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I think that they're more participatory because they have to be. Because I have to tell you that, like, an 18-month-old is not going to sit down and interact with me. So those parents are very much, involved and working. I think that I had a couple parents that I made cry right off the bat. And okay, it's not because I was being mean, but like, I was like, okay, this is how it has to be. And the parents are like, we don't feel like we know what to do. We feel really, this is not working. And like, okay, I think it can work, but let's modify some of these things and see if we can, make it work better. And all those families are feeling way, way, way better about stuff. I think I can say that across the board for all of our families. And so it's kind of nice because if we have a family who's ill, where we used to just kind of cancel that session, like if it's not like a big illness, we can just do teletherapy, where they can't come in if they've got anything at all going on because of COVID, restrictions. But it's nice that we've got that option, and parents are like, oh, okay, sounds good.
This is Nedra. I would definitely be one of those parents that would be crying. Just so you know. Have you found a lot of parents wanting to postpone therapy during this time just because it is too much for them and they don't like the way
No,
that it's set up?
we have got a huge waiting list right now. It has been insane. I thought that that's what would happen. I thought that we would have a drop in numbers. I thought that people would just be like kind of hunkering down. Plus the financial situation, like a lot of people are in kind of shaky spots with that. So I was surprised. I'm very surprised about how, we've got a number of families who are wanting more therapy because
Wow.
they're not getting it at school, or they're
Right.
getting something, but it's not, it's not the real deal.
This is Nedra. I 100% agree with that. I feel like we're not getting anything from school right now. And,
Yeah.
Just I feel like the school therapist is just different. They don't understand the hearing loss. Really, it's more about just their speech. And ours is more of the processing and understanding and that kind of thing that I feel like we're missing.
And I think too that they're trying to serve a lot of kids in a group, and
Right.
like they're just like babysitting. Okay, I hope I didn't offend anybody.
Oh, no, I know. Yeah, no, it's not, and that's what it is. It's like they have a large amount of kids that they have to service within a certain amount of time. And one of the only ways to do it is in those group settings. And so, like for my son, for example, they play a game for 30 minutes a week together as a group. I don't see where really anything else is happening.
Yeah.
But, and like you said, it's just because that's their situation and they don't know what else to do in that kind of a setting.
Yeah.
But we have time for one or two more questions just to be respectful of our interpreters and Carla's time and all of you joining us tonight. We know it's a late night and you've got your kiddos and whoever waiting for you. If you have any more questions, please feel free to turn on your camera or type in the chat box. We'll give it a second. Tracy said, wonderful, informative evening. Thank you. Thank you, Tracy, for joining us. All right, well, if we have no other questions, Heidi?
This is Heidi. I was just going to give a couple of announcements once you wrap up.
Yeah, yes, we want to thank Carla very much for being here tonight and taking time out of her schedule to share this information with us. And it's always so informative. I learn something new from you every time I talk to you. Heidi, our executive director, would like to give us just some upcoming events we have for the month of September, which, as Carla mentioned, is Deaf Awareness Month. And Heidi, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Nedra. This is Heidi. As Nedra mentioned, we have several upcoming events that are happening, and in honor of Deaf Awareness Month, we are trying to keep our event load a little busy, so we will have several more What's Up Wednesday. So next week we have special guest audiologist Deb Flynn. So the event it'll be another What's Up Wednesday, Ask an Audiologist. It'll give you an opportunity to ask any questions, engage with her, anything that might come up, and she will give a short presentation at the beginning, so we hope you'll join us for that. And we just got confirmation earlier today, we will be putting on a deaf panel on September 30th, which will be the following Wednesday for What's Up Wednesday, and we hope you will join us for that. We have several different deaf and hard of hearing individuals that will be joining us to share a little bit about their experience growing up deaf and hard of hearing. And this coming Sunday, for those of you that might be on here in the professional setting and work with families, we have a really great Latino event happening, language and literacy, with a former teacher of the deaf. She is a native speaker of Spanish, so she is going to be presenting some tips and strategies similar to tonight as Carla did, as far as how to engage the child more. So it's going to be more of a focus on the literacy part, reading to the children, how to really engage them, positioning, and that's going to be in all languages as far as giving those tips to them, whether they're using ASL or spoken language. It will be a Spanish only event, but you guys are more than welcome to share that information with any of your families if you know of any that would benefit from that. And that's happening this Sunday at 2 p.m. as well. You will be able to find all of that information on our Facebook page. And we really, really appreciate you, Carla, for taking the time out. Such a wonderful presentation. I'm blown away. It's always so great to have wonderful professionals like yourself out there that really support the families and really are, doing their best. We know it's just as hard on you as it is as parents during this pandemic, and you guys really stepping up and being creative and how to engage and interact. And like you said, I know it's a lot more work behind the scene to get ready for those individual sessions with your kiddos. So we really appreciate all that you guys do as well. And thank you again to everyone that joined us. And that's all I had, Najwa. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi, for all those updates. We really hope to see you guys on those events happening this month, and keep checking our Facebook page. We've always got something going on. So thank you again, Carla. Thank you, Katula. Thank you, Tara. We always appreciate your time for interpreting, and hopefully we weren't too fast for you guys tonight and you were able to keep up with us. So if there's nothing else, we hope you all have a wonderful night, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you.
Thanks.